In the vast tapestry of Hindu tradition, few questions reveal the complexity of Dharma more clearly than this. Can a Vaishnava devotee live entirely without performing rituals for ancestors, Pitras, and deities devatas other than Vishnu? For most Hindus, performing shraddha for ancestors and honoring various deities is considered not just tradition but sacred duty, described in texts like Manusmriti as essential obligations that, if neglected, render one unworthy of inheritance and incur spiritual debt. Yet for Vaishnavas, devotees of Lord Vishnu and his incarnations like Krishna and Rama, the scriptural guidance seems to point in a different direction. Their foundational texts, particularly the Sat Kriya Sara Dipika, compiled by Gopalabhatta Goswami, explicitly instruct initiates to avoid worshipping ancestors and deities other than Vishnu. This apparent contradiction raises profound questions about ritual obligation, spiritual authority, and the hierarchy of Hindu scriptures. Can Vaishnava texts override classical Vedic injunctions? Does exclusive devotion to Vishnu fulfill or transgress traditional duties? Today, we explore these questions through the lens of both classical and Vaishnava scriptures, examining the theological and philosophical frameworks that shape these differing approaches to worship. Welcome to Vaishnavas and Traditional Worship. Can devotees forego devata and pitru rituals? To understand the tension between Vaishnava practice and traditional requirements, we must first examine what classical Hindu texts say about obligations to ancestors and deities. The concept of runa or spiritual debt is central to Hindu Dharma. As the 19th search result explains, ancient Hindu Shastras state that human beings are responsible for three types of debts known as Devaruna, Rishiruna, and Pitruruna. Among these, Pitruruna, the debt to ancestors, is emphasized as particularly crucial. The Manusmriti, one of Hinduism's foundational legal texts, is unequivocal about the necessity of shraddha rituals. According to Search Result 17, the Smriti texts state that any person who does not perform the shraddha ritual is not entitled to inheritance. The Garuda Purana goes further, suggesting that ancestors whose shraddha rites are neglected become wandering spirits, unable to progress in their afterlife journey. As the 11th search result states, the souls of ancestors whose shraddha rites are neglected keep wandering. Even more emphatically, classical texts like the Vishwamitra Smriti and Bhavishya Purana outline 12 different types of shraddha ceremonies for various circumstances, highlighting the detailed attention given to ancestral worship in traditional Hinduism. The 19th search result articulates the traditional view powerfully. The Matsya Purana describes different varieties of shraddha, while Yamasmriti describes 5 categories of shraddha, demonstrating how thoroughly codified these practices are. Similarly, worship of various deities for different purposes is woven into the fabric of traditional Hindu practice, with specific deities presiding over different aspects of life and requiring appropriate ritual acknowledgement. This established framework of obligations creates the context for understanding just how significant the Vaishnava departure from these practices truly is. Visuals depict key verses from the Sat Kriya Sara Dipika and Hari-bhakti-vilasa, portraits of prominent Vaishnava acharyas, and scenes from Vaishnava temples emphasizing devotion to Vishnu and Krishna. The Vaishnava position on worship of deities and ancestors represents a distinctive approach based on its own scriptural authorities. Central to this position is the Sat Kriya Sara Dipika, compiled by Gopalabhatta Goswami in the 16th century. According to Search Result 15, this text explicitly states, if one is initiated into the holy name of Lord Vishnu, then one should avoid sankalpa, dana, worship of forefathers and demigods, nor wear kusha. The text cites the Skanda Purana as authority. This instruction is not presented as optional, but as a requirement for those dedicated to Vishnu. Similarly, the Hari-bhakti-vilasa, another authoritative Vaishnava text, establishes protocols that bypass traditional deity worship in favor of exclusive focus on Vishnu. The Padma Purana, cited in the Sat Kriya Sara Dipika, states, the devotee interested in pure devotion to the Lord and initiated with Vaishnava mantra should never worship Ganesha and the other devatas. Wherever ordinary worshippers prescribe worship of Ganesha and other deities, the Vaishnava should worship the pure devotees of Vishnu. Gopalabhatta Goswami acknowledges that most Vaishnavas are grihastas, householders, who need to perform life cycle ceremonies, but he restructures these rituals to align with Vaishnava theology. This creates a fascinating scenario where Vaishnava texts explicitly address and reinterpret the very classical injunctions that otherwise would require broader worship. The philosophical foundation for this exclusive devotion comes from the concept often expressed as watering the root. This principle, drawn from the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, suggests that by worshipping Vishnu, the supreme source of all beings, one automatically worships all subsidiary deities and entities. The analogy explains that just as watering the root of a tree nourishes all branches, leaves, and flowers simultaneously, worship of Vishnu, as the root of existence, automatically satisfies all emanations from him, including deities and ancestors. This concept is reinforced by Krishna's statement in the Bhagavad Gita 9.23, "Those who are devotees of other gods and who worship them with faith actually worship only me, but they do so in a wrong way." This verse suggests that all worship ultimately reaches Krishna Vishnu, but direct worship is more effective than indirect. Vaishnavas extend this concept further by referencing the statement that Vishnu worship is complete in itself, while worship of other deities requires additional worship of Vishnu to be complete. For Vaishnavas, this isn't merely about theological hierarchy, but about devotional purity. They argue that love, to be complete, must be exclusive. Just as a spouse wouldn't appreciate divided affection, divine love shouldn't be dispersed among many objects. The concept of ekantika bhakti, or single-pointed devotion, emphasizes that divided worship yields divided results, while exclusive devotion to the Supreme brings complete fulfillment. This philosophical framework provides the rationale for why Vaishnavas believe they can fulfill their obligations to ancestors and other aspects of creation through exclusive focus on Vishnu, not through neglect, but through a more efficient and comprehensive form of acknowledgement. How then do Vaishnavas reconcile their exclusive focus on Vishnu with the broader Hindu tradition and its emphasis on obligations to ancestors and various deities? The answer lies in adaptation rather than abandonment. While Vaishnavas don't perform traditional Shraddha ceremonies focused on feeding ancestors, they don't simply ignore the transition of family members. Instead, they modify these ceremonies to align with their theological understanding. For example, search result 15 indicates that, within Vaishnav practice, the traditional Sattvika-vritti Shraddha, ancestral offering, is transformed into worship of the Vaishnava Parampara, lineage of teachers. As stated in search result 18, one should recite the Svastivakana, Sankalpa, establish the Gata, worship Lord Vishnu, worship the Parampara Karyas, Sattvika-vritti Shraddha, and perform Sedaraja Puja, Vasudhara. Similarly, life cycle ceremonies, samskaras, that would traditionally involve various deities are restructured to focus exclusively on Vishnu while maintaining their functional purpose. The Sat Kriya Sara Dipika provides detailed guidance for these adaptations, showing that Vaishnavas are not neglecting important life transitions, but reframing them within their theological understanding. Search result 13 reveals how Gopala Bhatta Goswami addressed the issue of Vaishnavas needing to perform life cycle ceremonies. Recognizing that most of the Vaishnavas are grihasthas and that they should perform the samskaras, he has given a procedure that is not contradictory or offensive to the Vaishnava ideals. This demonstrates a thoughtful engagement with tradition rather than dismissal, finding a middle path that honors both exclusive devotion to Vishnu and the important markers of human life that rituals serve to acknowledge. For Vaishnavas, these adaptations represent not a rejection of Hindu tradition, but a purification, removing elements they consider distracting from pure devotion while maintaining the essential structures that support family and social life. How do contemporary Vaishnavas navigate these theological principles in practice, especially when living in broader Hindu society where traditional expectations remain strong? In established Vaishnava institutions like ISKCON, International Society for Krishna Consciousness, adherence to exclusive Vishnu worship is maintained with systematic adaptations of traditional ceremonies. Rather than performing conventional Shraddha, they might honor departed family members through special offerings to Vishnu or Krishna, believing this brings the highest benefit to the deceased. For Vaishnavas living within more traditional Hindu families, navigating these differences can require careful diplomacy. Some may participate in family ceremonies while mentally redirecting their devotion to Vishnu, maintaining external harmony while preserving internal devotional principles. Others may gently educate family members about their spiritual commitments and seek compromises that respect both traditions. In many cases, families develop hybrid approaches that accommodate both traditional expectations and Vaishnava principles. For life cycle ceremonies like marriages, childbirth rituals, or coming-of-age ceremonies, Vaishnava families often engage priests familiar with texts like Sat Kriya Sara Dipika, who can perform these ceremonies according to Vaishnava protocols rather than conventional approaches. What's particularly interesting is how Vaishnavas frame this exclusive focus. Rather than seeing it as neglecting obligations to ancestors, they view it as offering their family members the highest possible benefit connection to supreme spiritual reality rather than temporary benefits of conventional rituals. There is understanding that devotional service to Vishnu provides comprehensive benefits. By worshipping Vishnu, the supreme source of all beings, one automatically worships all subsidiary deities and aspects of creation. The question of whether Vaishnavas can live without performing rituals for ancestors and deities other than Vishnu reveals a fascinating dimension of Hindu tradition: its capacity to contain multiple, sometimes contradictory approaches to the divine within a broadly shared framework. While classical texts like Manusmriti and Garuda Purana emphasize the necessity of Shraddha and broader deity worship, Vaishnava texts like Sat Kriya Sara Dipika and Hari-bhakti-vilasa provide a theological framework for redirecting all devotion exclusively to Vishnu. Rather than simply rejecting traditional obligations, Vaishnavas reframe them through the philosophical principle of watering the root, the understanding that by worshipping the source, one automatically honors all that emanates from it. This doesn't represent a careless dismissal of tradition, but a thoughtful reinterpretation based on a particular understanding of divine hierarchy and the nature of devotion. For Vaishnavas, exclusive focus on Vishnu isn't spiritual negligence, but the highest form of comprehensive worship. Whether this approach is viewed as a legitimate adaptation or a departure from essential duties depends largely on which textual authorities one considers primary: the classical Dharma texts or the later devotional literature of specific traditions. What's clear is that Hindu tradition has always contained this creative tension between universal principles and sectarian interpretations, between ritual inclusivity and devotional focus. This diversity of approaches doesn't weaken the tradition, but enriches it, offering multiple valid paths to the divine. For those seeking to understand these traditions, the wisest approach may be neither to declare one perspective exclusively correct, nor to dismiss the differences as unimportant, but to appreciate how each tradition's practices reflect its unique understanding of the divine and the spiritual journey.